Is cold approach pickup easier or harder in 2024? In this video, we're going to take a look at a unique study that breaks this down in extreme detail. So we're going to hear from the top dating coaches from all across the world, and the answer will probably surprise you. It was initially this video that really surprised me.
50% of men aged 18 to 30 haven't approached a woman in the last year.
And the men that have approached are doing remarkably well. More than half have gotten a date from it. And it goes down if you look to like long-term relationships, how many dates turn into a long-term relationship. But the men who are approaching, they're doing pretty well, actually.
Of that 50% of them did get a date.
Might have even been about 70%.
The first part was only mildly surprising that 50% of guys have approached a girl in the last year. I thought the number would be a little smaller. I thought the majority of guys would be too scared to cold approach. But then the part that really surprised me is that half of the guys that have approached a girl were able to get a date from in the last year. I thought the number would be a lot lower. I thought most guys were like really awkward, just had no idea what they were doing. But it seems that like the vast majority of guys don't know about cold approach pickup, don't know about game. But it seems that despite that, half of them are able to get a date from cold approach. So I decided to go out and actually find the study they were referencing to see if what they're saying is true. And this study is really, really interesting. So let's break this down. So this is the foundation here. About half of single men have not approached a woman in person within the past year. Okay, that's kind of what they said. This is true for each age group, but it does vary. For example, 59% of men 18 to 25 Zoomers have not approached someone in the past year. When it goes to millennials, 26 and 40, 48% of them have not approached. So it seems that the younger the guys, where they're measuring as early as 18, are approaching less. And then when you get to millennials, Generation X, they're approaching more, right? So again, that's kind of what you would expect, because when you think of a Zoomer, you think of someone who's socially awkward, who's on their phone the whole time. So it makes sense that Zoomers are approaching the least. Now here they take a look from a woman's perspective. For women aged 25 and below, 55% have not been approached within the past month. That's right. Over half the girls 18 to 25 have not been approached in the last month, and 35% have not been approached within the last year. That's pretty crazy. 35% of girls have not been approached in the last year, ages 18 to 25, right? So again, you would think that, okay, if half the guys out there are approaching, and they're probably approaching multiple girls, the majority of girls would have been approached. But the answer is no. There's a lot of girls who don't get approached, right? And I would assume these are the girls who don't really go out and party as much. These are the girls who just go to the gym, maybe run an errand and go home. And a lot more guys are afraid to approach girls during the daytime, right? I would venture to say the majority of guys who've cold approached a girl in the last year did it at nighttime where there was alcohol involved, where there's some liquid courage. Now let's take a look at this part. This is really, really interesting. So this is a chart that shows, do women want to be approached more or not? 74% of women aged 25 below want to be approached more. Again, 3 out of 4 women aged 25 below want to be approached more. Completely dispels this whole narrative that majority of women are tired of being approached and they just want to be left alone. Not true at all, right? 68% of women between 30 and 40 want to be approached more. So again, slightly less, but still over a majority. And for women 41 and older, 45% wish to be approached more, but who really gives a shit about them, right? So yeah, this is really, really interesting. Again, if we go for the youngest women, like, 18 to 25, youngest, not Zerka style, but youngest within, according to the study, the majority of them want to be approached more. And this totally makes sense, since it seems like when it comes to Zoomers, they're approaching the least, right? So if you follow this trend, the guys who are approaching the least, the girls in that age range wants to be approached the more. So if you're a guy who's like in your late 20s or 30s, even potentially 40s, and you like girls who are 21, 22, then those are the girls who want to be approached the more. But if you want girls who are like 30, 35, girls within more your age range, still the majority of them want to be approached. So I found this part really, really interesting. Now here they talk about, do men regret not approaching? The answer is kind of what you expect, mostly yes. And regret is stable across age cohorts. 60% of Zoomers and 64% of millennials wish they had approached more women. And again, that's because you miss basically 100% of the shots that you don't take. I would venture to say the majority of guys who don't have regrets about approaching are guys who either had a lot of sex, right, so they got out of their system, or guys who are in a relationship, or some combination of those two. Versus I would say the majority of guys who are single, or especially guys who are kind of like given up on dating, they wish they took more action when they were younger, right? They're thinking like, fuck, like, why did I miss out on this? Why didn't I take this opportunity? I think about it like this, like when you're 80, when you're 90, when you're 100, wherever modern technology takes us, and you're on your deathbed, are you going to be thinking like, damn, I really regret that I approached that girl and she rejected me? Or are you going to be thinking, damn, I really wish I took more risks in life. I really wish I wasn't such a pussy, right? And that's kind of how I try to live my life. So this totally makes sense to me. Now here they took a look at reasons why men did not approach women, and they looked at regular guys compared to black pill guys. This is really interesting. So for regular guys, and actually all guys, fear of rejection was the most common reason, right? And I can dispel this one really quickly with giving you guys a good mindset. When you cold approach a girl and she rejects you, you're not actually being rejected because she doesn't really know you, right? She's rejecting her perception of you. And that perception of you is filtered through her past experiences, her mood, the last guy that she had sex with, the last guy that she dated, all that stuff, right? So again, when you approach a girl and she rejects you within 20, 30 seconds, a minute, 5 seconds, she's not really rejecting you because she doesn't know you, right? So you have nothing to be afraid of, right? And especially the more you do it, the less you start to give a shit. I used to work in sales where we would knock door to door, and eventually I got to a point where I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I've already had so many people slam the door on me. I don't care if one more person rejects me. You get to the kind of that point. But yeah, it seems that for black belt guys, about 75% of them, 70% of them did not approach because of fear of rejection, or at least for them, 70% of them, fear of rejection was a big thing. And then for normie guys, it was about 55%. Fear of social consequences is interesting. It seems that normie guys are more afraid of that than black pill guys. I guess when you have no friends, like a black pillar, then there's really no fear of social consequences. Now, here's where this is the equalizer, fear of legal consequences. It seems that about 7-8% of normie guys were afraid of that, but over 25% of black pill guys were afraid of legal consequences. And this is something I commonly see in the red pill community, especially the black pill community. They're so worried that they're gonna get in trouble for approaching a girl. I'm gonna let you guys in on a secret, okay? I've approached thousands of women. I know coaches who approach thousands of women, my friends. Altogether, there's probably tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands of approaches. No one has ever gotten in legal trouble for approaching a girl, right? Worst case scenario, you approach a girl, she's a total Karen, she's a bitch. She calls the police and she says, this guy came up and said hi to me. The guy's gonna be like, okay, well, is he following you right now? No, this was like he went up on his way. There's nothing that the cops can arrest you for. You did absolutely nothing wrong. That's not to say that false rape accusations don't happen, but according to statistics, you're as likely to be convicted of false rape accusation as you are to be hit by lightning. But again, right, that the small risk that you have there is if you get to the point where you actually bring your girl back to your place, you have sex, or you come close to having sex or in an isolated environment, right? It doesn't happen for just approaching girls. So you have absolutely nothing to fear. Again, you have so much higher chance of literally getting hit by a car on the way to approach a girl than you are actually of having any kind of theoretical legal consequence for a crime that doesn't even exist, right? So I thought this part was interesting. Now, here's really the part they talked about in the video that I thought was really interesting. This is about, how successful are guys who cold approach girls. And this graph is a little confusing, but let me explain that. So it seems that they're broken down based on connection, dates, sex. Let's just look at connection, dates, sex, and long-term relationships. So these are the guys who did approach girls, right? And it seems that 58% of them were able to have a connection with a girl, right? Whatever the fuck that means. 60% of them were able to get a date. And then they break it down. The red, yellow, green is like, okay, did they get one date? Did they get 2 dates? But in terms of the guys, the black bars, the guys that did not get a date. So again, 60% of guys who approached were able to get a date in the last year. And then we look at sex, 47% of guys were able to have sex. These are, again, the guys that approached. If we go to 2-month relationship, it's about 28% of them were able to have a 2-month relationship, and about 14% of them were able to have a long-term relationship. I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that a lot of people just are not good at relationships. They have too much baggage. They're just not really sure how to communicate, how to set proper boundaries. So that part doesn't really surprise me. But this is actually a lot more optimistic than I thought, and I'm generally fairly optimistic when it comes to this kind of stuff, because I did not expect that, again, most of these guys have no idea what pickup is, they never studied this, they're probably at least mildly awkward, that literally 60% of them who actually took action and approached a girl were able to get a date. So again, I think this is really, really good news. And then here we have the conclusion. Individual differences in risk aversion, particularly in the context of generational shift, may represent underexamined contribution of young adult singleton. Populations of men that are less likely to approach women for dates in person may be more risk averse. That is true, right? And again, the best way to avoid all risk is sit in your mom's basement and do nothing. Don't start a business, don't do anything, right? And, you're not going to have any risk of anything bad happening. You're not going to get rejected, but you're also going to die lonely, bored, and full of regrets when you get older, right? So I think that part of life is taking smart risks, right? I've done that with business, I've done that with approach, right? You want to take smart risks. The guy that takes no risks also gets no W's. Men who are black pilled fear rejection, legal consequences more. We covered that Zoomers are less likely to have ever approached a woman. We covered that men who never approached score lower in risk propensity. However, asking women for dates in person still works. The majority of women, particularly those in the youngest age groups wish that men approached them for dates more. Again, just this alone should be really good news. The vast majority of women, 3 out of 4, 18 to 25, want you to approach them more. And here I decided to reach out to some of the top dating coaches that I know, at least the guys who have success, and to see if basically their real life experience match what the study said. So first we have Justin Mark, and say whatever you want about his style or his game, but he's a dude who's Indian guy who's like 5'2", 5'3", and he's banging girls, right? Banging some attractive girls, right? Whether he's doing that through this style or that style doesn't really particularly matter. So I asked him this, I'm doing a survey of a few coaches, do you feel like pickup cold approach has gotten easier, stayed the same, or harder in the last few years? He says gotten easier, less competition, less guys doing it now than ever. Only issues 50% of relationships start online now. The real number is about 30%. Okay, here we have Marcus Wolf. So Marcus has traveled all across the world, as does Justin. He resides in Australia, but he's also spends a lot of time in Europe. He's been to America, blah, blah, blah. He says, hey bro, here are my thoughts. Definitely easier, at least in terms of girls' reaction to it or how receptive they are. In terms of volume, a lot of places seem to have less people going out since COVID. So for a newbie, that might make it more difficult to practice depending on the city. However, overall, there seems to having a generational shift to women having less slut shame and being more receptive. Very much agree with that part. I'll put it down to more men moving to dating apps and less people going out since COVID. Less women are open, the more receptive they tend to be. Very true, the study supported that. The women who get open the least, which is, Zoomer girls, or at least the guys who approach the least in that age range, the women in that age range want to be approached them more. Let me know what you find from everyone else, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and here we have Austin Summers, who right now is in Scandinavia, has also traveled all across the world. He said it got harder from 2012 until like 2022. Alternatives in dating apps and Instagram, hardcore SJW propaganda, COVID plus social atrophy from COVID. Since 2022, I think it's gotten easier due to so few guys doing it now, and women having bad experience online with guys they don't have chemistry with, people valuing in-person connection more. So what are my overall thoughts about this? I think that cold approach hasn't gotten really easier or harder overall. I think that there's pros and cons now. So I think that totally agree with what Marcus said, is that girls have less slut shame. So if you are to get a date in 2024, you have a much higher chance of having sex with her than if you were to get a date in, let's just say 2002 or 1992, right? Because again, girls have a lot less slut shame now, right? But I think girls are also more flaky now. But you can compensate for that by either doing more volume, talking to more girls to gain more phone numbers, building a really solid connection, just developing a lot of attraction through a good game, or some combination of all three is what I recommend. So if you can compensate for the downsides that exist today, which is girls being more flaky, girls being a little bit more reliant on social media, by again, by running higher volume, and even especially if you develop a good social media, but even that's not necessary. I know guys who don't have an Instagram who get laid a good amount of cold approach, and the biggest part of it is developing really, really good game, being able to approach more. As you saw from the data, the vast majority of women are just out there waiting for you to be approached, and you shouldn't be one of those guys that sits there and regrets it when they get old. All right, hope you guys found this video valuable, and if you haven't already, make sure you check out a free Tinder guide. Shows you how to get the kind of photos that get you matches, how to write the kind of bio that gets girls interested and makes them message you first, and most importantly, text game. How do you get all those new matches out on dates? And best of all, it's free. Link is going to be in the description and pinned comment. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time.